the Gould Mine podcast.
So we talked about the second citizenship, residency programs, that sort of stuff. You mentioned that there are several potential benefits to investing in international markets. Outside of that, what are some other maybe like nuggets that you can share with the audience that they might I might not even know exist, right? Like what are some other potential benefits, or are there? I don't know.
Look, I mean, I'll just start by saying that the U.S. generally is a good market because you're lucky enough that, it's such a huge country. And, even when things are going great in the U.S., there's always some small town where, I don't know, they discovered some oil well, or I don't know, they're building a factory or something where it's just booming, right? So there's always something happening in the States. So, Americans who call me and are like, I want amazing returns and, invest internationally. Sure, there are people that will promote stuff and tell you, you can make like 15% in Panama, blah, blah. That's all nonsense. The reality is, if you want high returns as an American, stay in the US and get some leverage and do it reasonably and find the right markets. That's the way. Going internationally really is about diversification. So we discussed the residencies, we discussed the citizenships, and you can get decent capital gains and cash flow and all that. Yeah, that's not an issue. Another one I'd add is access to bank accounts. Being able to have, when you own real estate in a country, typically you then have access to their bank system. So if you buy real estate in Hungary, for example, that will give you the right to open a bank account in Hungary as an American, which is not easy. So then you can have money stashed away overseas. So that would be, I think, another important benefit is access to bank accounts overseas when you invest in real estate. If you're looking for diversification, that's a good thing. If you don't care, if you think like, I'm fine, I'm all in the US, etc., God bless you.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's really interesting. And actually when Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, right? So in my head, I was thinking, there has to be like a better way, right? So what I'm hearing you say is like, hey, question, right? Because actually this just popped in my head. Are all of these, so like in Hungary, for example, are they federally backed? Meaning is there here FDIC, if up to 250 is like federally insured. So are there like assurances or insurances like that when you're placing your money into international banks like that, or what does that look like?
It depends on the jurisdiction. And across the European Union, there is typically an insurance of 100,000 euros per bank account, which is government backed. What is it worth? I don't know. And then in other markets, it really depends. Some countries have these guarantee schemes, others don't. So for example, in Mauritius, which is an interesting little tax haven between two very high growth markets, Africa and India, with English as a native language, so you get good service. They have a semblance of an insurance, but I wouldn't really count on it. But some of these banks are very well capitalized. So according to Basel III requirements for banks, you're supposed to have a tier 1 capital ratio of at least 10, 12%. They're 28%, some of these banks. So they're almost 3 times more capitalized than what the minimum required is. So that's another way of approaching it. It's just going for banks that are well capitalized. Do you prefer to put your money in a bank that is poorly capitalized, but it has a government guarantee, which you may or may not trust? Or do you prefer to have your money in a well-capitalized bank so that you minimize the risk of bad things happening in the first place? I don't have a clear answer to this. The answer is probably in between, probably a mixture of both, right?